Okay, so get this. A true crime fan
Yeah.
in South Korea, like, actually committed murder, seemingly just to know what it felt like. We're going deep on this case.
Right.
Tung Yoo-jung,
Yeah.
23 years old,
Yeah.
brutally killed her English tutor, Hannah.
Right.
You've given us some YouTube footage research on this case.
Yeah.
It's wild, trust me.
It's fascinating because this case, it intersects with so many bigger issues.
Oh, yeah.
The pressures of Korean society,
Uh-huh.
the whole hikikomori thing, the rise of that.
Right.
And even the ethics of true crime consumption. Like, where is that line between fascination and action? It can get blurry.
Totally. So before we get into, like, the psychology of it all,
Sure.
let's just lay out the facts.
Okay.
What happened to Hannah?
Okay, so back in May 2023,
Okay.
Hannah was working through a tutoring app, and she got a request.
Yeah.
Seemed like it was from a mom wanting English lessons for her middle school daughter,
Okay, pretty standard.
right? Seems pretty normal.
Totally how these apps usually work.
Yeah, except the student who showed up at Hannah's door was not a middle schooler.
Oh, wow.
It was 23-year-old Tung Yoo-jung dressed in a thrifted school uniform,
Oh, my gosh.
armed with a knife.
Wow. That's a level of premeditation. That's just bone-chilling.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're immersing yourself in all these true crime documentaries, you're probably picking up a few tips on how to cover your tracks.
That's what's disturbing. You know, we often see true crime as a way to learn about the world's dangers, protect ourselves.
Right.
But in Yoo-jung's case, it seems like it might have done the opposite.
Oh, wow.
Desensitizing her to violence, even providing a blueprint.
So we have Yoo-jung posing as a teenager to get access to Hannah.
Right.
What happened next? I know there's some pretty unsettling information about a taxi driver.
The taxi driver's account is one of the eeriest parts of this story.
Yeah.
He unknowingly helped Yoo-jung dispose of the body
Oh, gosh.
twice.
What?
He picked her up once with a heavy suitcase and later with a backpack.
Wow.
Both times she seemed completely calm.
Are you serious?
Even cheerful.
Hold on. So not only did she murder her tutor,
Right.
she dismembered the body, too.
Mm-hmm.
That takes the level of planning to a whole other level.
It does.
It's hard to even imagine the mental state someone would have to be in to do something like that.
Yeah, and it gets even creepier.
Oh, no.
The taxi driver later told police that Yoo-jung was practically skipping as she walked into the park with the remains.
Oh, my gosh.
This complete detachment from the horror of her actions
Yeah.
is one of the things that makes this case so baffling.
Yeah, and it's not just the taxi driver's account.
Right.
We've got the CCTV footage, too, right?
Tons of it. You see Yoo-jung going about her day,
Uh-huh.
seemingly unfazed, like she didn't just commit this horrific crime.
It's like something out of a psychological thriller.
It really is.
So let's dive into Yoo-jung's psychology a bit.
Okay.
What kind of person were we dealing with here? Was she always a loner?
From what we can gather, Yoo-jung was essentially invisible in rehearsal circles. No close friends ignored by classmates. And even her family described her as distant
Oh, wow.
after graduating high school.
Yeah.
She spent 5 years claiming to study for a government exam that she wasn't qualified to take,
5 years.
essentially shutting herself off from the outside world.
That's a long time to be completely isolated. Was she like a hikikomori, those Japanese shut-ins we hear about?
While there are definite parallels, Yoo-jung's case doesn't perfectly fit the hikikomori profile.
Okay.
Those individuals tend to be completely withdrawn, often refusing to leave their homes for years.
Right.
While Yoo-jung was isolated, she did venture out, and her crime required a level of planning and interaction that we don't typically see in hikikomori cases.
So maybe not a textbook hikikomori,
Right.
but definitely a deeply isolated individual. And we know she was obsessed with true crime.
Right.
Could that have somehow filled a void in her life?
Possibly.
Provided some sort of twisted connection to the world?
It's certainly a possibility. Her internet search history is full of deep dives into murder. Tips on disposing of bodies, countless true crime documentaries,
Oh, gosh.
and even searches related to the Korean film Helpless, where a character assumes a false identity just like she did.
So he had this fascination with murder, the social isolation,
Right.
and then the crime itself.
Mhm.
But what was her motive? I mean, she confessed, didn't she?
She did, and that's where things get even more complicated.
Okay.
Her confession was shockingly straightforward.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to experience murder. Almost like she was checking something off her bucket list.
Okay, but that's almost too simple, isn't it?
It is.
Like something out of a movie.
Right.
Was she being truthful, or was this another manipulation? A way to control the narrative?
That's what investigators and experts are grappling with.
Right.
Some believe she's a pathological liar, carefully crafting a persona to manipulate those around her.
Right.
Others argue that her confession, however bizarre, might hold a grain of truth. That maybe she was so engrossed in the world of true crime that the line between fantasy and reality became blurred.
Okay, so motive is murky.
Yeah.
But what about the consequences? How did this impact the people around Yu Jong, specifically her grandfather who raised her?
Well, Hannah's family has understandably chosen to remain private, but we do know from the YouTube video that Yu Jong's grandfather was absolutely devastated.
Oh, gosh.
He was consumed by guilt, feeling that he had failed both his granddaughter and society by raising a killer.
It's a tragic situation all around. You have the victim's family grieving an unimaginable loss.
Of course.
And then the perpetrator's family struggling with their own kind of grief and guilt.
And then there's the public's reaction to consider.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
This case really sparked a lot of anger and fear in South Korea.
Oh, yeah. A seemingly ordinary young woman commits a brutal murder, seemingly out of nowhere. It's enough to make anyone question their own safety. Did people start demanding answers? Changes something to prevent this from happening again?
Absolutely. There was widespread outrage, particularly towards Yu Jong's apparent lack of remorse.
Yeah. Reports from the prison indicated that she was adjusting well to life behind bars.
Really?
Eating well, sleeping soundly, which further fueled public anger.
So not only did she commit this horrific crime,
Right.
but she also seemed completely unfazed by it.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
It is, and it's one of the reasons investigators ordered psychological evaluations, including psychopathy tests.
Ah, so that's where the whole psychopath debate comes in.
Right.
But what exactly does it mean to be a psychopath? We hear the term thrown around a lot,
Sure.
but what are we really talking about here?
You're right. The term psychopath is often used loosely. In clinical terms, it refers to individuals who display a specific set of traits, including a lack of empathy, remorse, and guilt, combined with superficial charm and a manipulative personality.
So are you saying Yu Jong fits that description?
Her scores on the psychopathy tests were inconsistent, which makes things even more complex.
Wait, inconsistent. What does that even mean? It means she didn't neatly fit into a box. Some of her scores were high enough to raise serious concerns, while others were more ambiguous. This created a lot of debate amongst the experts who evaluated her.
Okay.
Some believe she's a true psychopath, capable of calculated cruelty, while others argue that her behavior might be the result of other factors, like her social isolation or potential mental health issues.
Okay, so even the experts aren't on the same page here.
Right.
That makes this even more of a puzzle.
Yeah.
But hold on. There was something in the research about Yu Jong potentially contacting other tutors before her arrest, right?
That's right. Investigators found evidence suggesting she might have been reaching out to other potential victims.
Oh, wow.
This raised the chilling possibility that the murder of Hannah wasn't a one-off act of morbid curiosity,
Oh, my God.
but rather the beginning of something much more sinister.
Wow, so this wasn't just a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment act.
Yeah.
We could be talking about a potential serial killer in the making.
That was the fear, and it sent shockwaves through South Korea.
Yeah.
People were already on edge after a string of incidents involving tutors being targeted.
Right.
Yu Jong's case felt like a tipping point, exposing vulnerabilities in the system and sparking a heated debate about how to prevent similar tragedies in the future.
Yeah, you can't blame people for feeling scared.
No.
It's like their sense of security was shattered. This wasn't some random act of violence.
No.
But a calculated attack by someone they thought they could trust.
Exactly. And it brought up serious concerns about the tutoring app itself.
Yeah.
Many tutors deleted their profiles out of fear,
Wow.
arguing that the app put them at risk by only verifying the tutor's information and not the client's.
Wait, so anyone could create a fake profile and request a tutor without any real background checks? That seems like a massive oversight, especially when you're dealing with young people.
It is.
Often working alone in unfamiliar environments.
You're absolutely right. And this case really highlighted the need for increased security measures on these platforms.
Yeah.
Background checks, verification protocols, anything to make sure that both tutors and students are protected.
So not only did this case expose like the dark underbelly of human nature,
It did.
but it also revealed some serious flaws in the systems we rely on to connect with each other. It's like a double whammy of unsettling realizations.
Precisely. This wasn't just about one crime, one perpetrator, or one victim.
Yeah.
It was about a much larger web of interconnected issues,
Right.
social isolation,
Yeah.
the ethics of true crime consumption, and the vulnerabilities created by technology.
Okay, so we've laid out the basic facts of the case.
We have?
But this is just the tip of the iceberg, right?
It is.
There's so much more to unpack here.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to the psychological and societal implications.
Absolutely. We need to delve deeper into the possible motivations behind Yuzhong's actions, the role of true crime in shaping her worldview, and the larger questions this case raises about mental health and personal responsibility in the digital age.
Right, and we need to talk about that taxi driver, the poor guy.
No.
To be unknowingly caught up in something so horrific, I can't imagine the trauma.
You're right. His experience adds another layer of complexity to this case.
Yeah.
Forcing us to consider the ripple effects of violence and the unseen victims who are often left picking up the pieces.
So listeners, buckle up. This is just the beginning of our deep dive.
That's right.
Into the unsettling world of Tong Yuzhong. We're about to go way beyond the headlines.
Yes.
And explore the dark side of human nature.
And we'll discuss the difficult questions this case raises about our individual and collective responsibility in preventing similar tragedies from happening in the future.
Okay, I am ready.
Let's do it.
It's hard to shake the feeling that taxi driver's experience is like a microcosm of this whole case.
Yeah.
Just an ordinary guy going about his job, totally blindsided by the darkness lurking beneath the surface.
Right.
It makes you wonder, how do we even begin to make sense of something like this?
It's a question that haunts us all, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we reconcile the seemingly ordinary with the potential for extraordinary evil? And in this case, it's even more complex because we have this added layer of Yuzhong's obsession with true crime.
Right. It's like this case forces us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that something we often see as entertainment, true crime documentaries, podcasts, books, could actually be a contributing factor to violence. It's unsettling, to say the least.
Absolutely. And the YouTube video you shared touches on this very point.
Yeah.
The host talks about how true crime can sometimes make you feel more aware of the dangers out there.
Right.
Almost like a form of self-defense.
Yeah, I get that. It's like the more you know about the bad guys, the better equipped you are to protect yourself. Knowledge is power, right?
But Yuzhong's case throws a wrench into that whole idea.
Yeah.
For her, true crime wasn't about awareness or prevention. It seems like it was almost a source of inspiration, a twisted form of escapism that ultimately led to real-life tragedy.
So are we saying that true crime is inherently dangerous?
I don't think so.
That it's somehow responsible for creating criminals?
I don't think it's that simple. I don't think it's about placing blame on a specific genre of entertainment. But I do think this case raises important questions about the potential impact of prolonged exposure to violent content.
Especially when you're dealing with someone like Yuzhong, who was already socially isolated.
Right.
And potentially struggling with mental health issues. It's like adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder about the ethics of true crime media.
Yeah.
Are we as consumers contributing to a culture that desensitizes us to violence or even glorifies criminals?
That's a tough one. I love a good true crime podcast.
Sure.
As much as the next person. But this case definitely makes me pause and think about the potential consequences.
Right.
Are we inadvertently giving these killers the attention they crave?
Yeah.
Are we somehow feeding the monster?
It's a debate that's been going on for years.
Right.
And there are no easy answers. But Yuzhong's case definitely adds a new layer of complexity to the discussion.
Yeah.
It forces us to examine our own consumption habits and ask ourselves some tough questions about where fascination ends and responsibility begins.
It's like we're all walking a tightrope.
It is.
Trying to balance our curiosity with the potential harm that can come from indulging in these dark stories.
Exactly.
But okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the mental health aspect of this case. We know Yuzhong was isolated and potentially showing signs of psychopathy.
Yeah.
But were there any other red flags? Could this tragedy have been prevented if she had received help earlier?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
Hindsight is always 20/20, but looking back, there were definitely warning signs.
Right.
The extreme isolation, the obsession with true crime, the apparent lack of empathy.
But those signs can be so subtle, so easily dismissed,
You
especially when you're dealing with someone who's good at hiding their true intentions. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing.
And in Yu-jong's case,
Yeah.
her isolation wasn't just self-imposed.
Right.
It was also, in part, a product of the immense pressure to succeed in Korean society.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The competition for jobs, education, even social standing is incredibly intense.
I can imagine.
It's no wonder that some young people crumble under the weight of those expectations.
So you're saying that the societal pressures might have contributed to her mental state,
Possibly.
pushing her further into isolation and making her more susceptible to the dark allure of true crime?
It's certainly a possibility. We can't ignore the broader context in which this tragedy took place.
Right.
It's a complex interplay of individual psychology and societal forces that ultimately led to this horrific outcome.
It's like a perfect storm of factors converging at just the wrong moment.
It really is.
And sadly, it seems like Yu Jong slipped through the cracks.
She did, which is why this case is such a powerful reminder.
Yeah. Of the importance of mental health awareness and early intervention. We need to create environments where young people feel comfortable seeking help, where they don't have to suffer in silence, because sometimes all it takes is one person to listen, to notice the signs, to offer a helping hand.
I couldn't agree more. It's about creating a safety net, not just for individuals,
Right.
but for society as a whole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the discussion about the tutoring app's responsibility comes back into play.
Yeah.
Could they have done more to protect their tutors?
Right.
Should there have been more stringent verification procedures in place?
I mean, we already touched on this, but it's worth repeating.
It is.
It's shocking that a platform connecting vulnerable young adults with strangers didn't have better safety measures in place.
Yeah.
It's like they were setting their tutors up for potential harm.
It was a major oversight, and one that hopefully will be addressed in the wake of this tragedy.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about preventing future crimes.
It's also about creating a culture of accountability and responsibility within these online platforms.
Right. Because technology is connecting us in ways we never could have imagined.
It is.
But it's also creating new vulnerabilities, new risks that we're only beginning to understand.
And it's forcing us to rethink our approach to safety and security in the digital age.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just assume that these platforms are safe.
Right.
We need to be proactive to demand better protections for both users and providers.
It's like we're all pioneers in this new frontier,
It is.
trying to navigate uncharted territory. And cases like Yu Jong's serve as stark reminders of the potential dangers lurking in the shadows.
And the importance of having these difficult conversations, of shining a light on the dark corners of our digital world, so that we can create a safer and more responsible online environment for everyone.
Well said. So we've talked about Yu Jong's psychology, the societal pressures, the ethical dilemmas of true crime, and the role of technology in this case. But I keep coming back to the human element, the sheer tragedy of it all.
Yes, it's easy to get lost in the analysis, but we must never forget that at the heart of this case is a young woman
Right.
who lost her life in a senseless act of violence, and a family that's left to pick up the pieces.
And on the other side, you have Yu Jong's grandfather,
Of course.
wrestling with the unimaginable grief of losing his granddaughter to the justice system,
Right.
to the darkness that consumed her.
It's a reminder that the ripple effects of violence extend far beyond the immediate victim and perpetrator. Entire families, communities, even societies are forever changed by these acts.
And it leaves us with a profound sense of unease,
It does.
a feeling that the world is perhaps a bit more fragile, a bit more unpredictable than we'd like to believe.
But amidst the tragedy, there's also a glimmer of hope. Because by confronting these uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
by engaging in these difficult conversations, we're taking a step towards creating a world where such horrors are less likely to occur.
It's about learning from the past, understanding the complex interplay of factors that lead to violence,
Right.
and working together to build a safer and more compassionate future.
And recognizing that each of us has a role to play in that process.
Yes.
Whether it's advocating for mental health awareness, demanding greater accountability from online platforms, or simply being more mindful of our own consumption habits, we can all contribute to creating a world where tragedies like this one become less frequent.
This case has really been a roller coaster of emotions and information.
It has.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I think it's time to start wrapping things up.
Yes, I think we've provided a lot for our listener to consider.
Yeah.
But before we conclude, I'd like to circle back to Yu Jong's state of mind,
Okay.
especially in the aftermath of the crime.
You mean her apparent lack of remorse? Her reported ease of adjustment to prison life?
Yes.
It's definitely one of the most disturbing aspects of this whole case.
It is.
I mean, is it even possible to comprehend such a level of detachment?
It challenges our fundamental understanding of human nature, doesn't it?
It does.
We want to believe that everyone has a conscience, that even the most hardened criminals feel some level of guilt or regret.
But what if that's not the case? What if someone can commit a horrific act and feel absolutely nothing? It's a terrifying thought.
It is, and it raises questions about the limits of our justice system.
Oh, yeah.
Can we truly rehabilitate someone who seemingly lacks the capacity for remorse?
Right.
Or are we simply warehousing individuals who pose a danger to society?
And what about the public's need for justice?
Right.
Is it even possible to achieve closure when the perpetrator shows no signs of understanding the gravity of their actions?
These are questions that will likely continue to be debated for years to come.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers, no simple solutions.
Right.
But by grappling with these uncomfortable truths, we can hopefully start to create a more nuanced and effective approach to criminal justice.
One that takes into account not just the crime itself,
Right.
but the underlying psychological and societal factors that contribute to these acts of violence.
And that prioritizes not only punishment, but also rehabilitation and the prevention of future tragedies.
So listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yes.
we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
This case has shown us that the line between fascination and action can become dangerously blurred. It's forced us to confront the dark side of human nature and the uncomfortable reality that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. But it's also shown us the power of knowledge, the importance of understanding the complexities of these issues, so that we can work together to create a safer and more compassionate world.
We've explored a lot of dark territory today, but we hope that by shining a light on these difficult topics, we can help spark a dialogue, a movement towards greater understanding and prevention. It feels like we've just barely scratched the surface.
I know, right?
Even after all this discussion.
It's true. This case is like a tangled web with threads connecting individual psychology and societal pressures, technological vulnerabilities, the ethics of our own consumption habits.
Yeah.
It's a case that will likely be studied and debated for years to come.
And I think that's what makes it so compelling, so unsettling.
It is.
Because it's not just a story about a crime.
Right.
It's a reflection of our own anxieties, our own fascination with the dark side of human nature.
Absolutely. And it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about the world we live in.
Like the fact that anyone, even someone who seems perfectly ordinary, is capable of extraordinary acts of cruelty.
Yes. Or the realization that our own fascination with true crime might be contributing to a culture that desensitizes us to violence, or even worse, inspires it.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to have these conversations to try to make sense of the senseless.
I agree, because by understanding the complexities of these issues, we can start to develop strategies for prevention, for creating a world where these tragedies are less likely to occur.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about those strategies. What can we do as individuals, as a society, to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, first and foremost, we need to prioritize mental health.
Okay.
We need to create environments where young people feel safe, seeking help, where they don't have to suffer in silence.
And that means breaking down the stigma surrounding mental illness.
Yes.
Providing access to affordable and quality care. And fostering a culture of empathy and understanding.
Exactly. It's about creating a safety net, a support system that catches people before they fall through the cracks.
And what about the role of technology in all of this?
Sure.
I mean, we've talked about the vulnerabilities created by these online platforms.
Right.
But can technology also be part of the solution?
Absolutely. Technology can be a powerful tool for connecting people, for providing access to resources, for raising awareness about mental health issues. We just need to be more thoughtful about how we design and implement these tools, ensuring that they prioritize safety and well-being.
So it's about using technology to build bridges, not walls.
Precisely. It's about using technology to create a more connected, compassionate, and resilient society.
What about the true crime phenomenon itself?
Yeah.
Is there a way to engage with these stories responsibly without contributing to the potential harm?
I think it's about being mindful of our consumption habits.
Okay.
Asking ourselves why we're drawn to these stories, or hoping to gain from them.
And being aware of the potential impact both on ourselves and on society as a whole.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance between curiosity and responsibility.
So it sounds like there's no easy fix, no magic bullet. It's about a multifaceted approach addressing the issue from multiple angles.
That's right. It's about individual actions, societal shifts and technological innovations, all working together to create a safer and more compassionate world.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It has.
It's been a journey into the dark heart of human nature.
It has.
But also a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Our capacity for empathy,
Yes.
for growth, for change.
And ultimately, that's the message we want to leave our listeners with.
Okay.
That even in the face of tragedy, there's always hope.
Yeah.
There's always the possibility of a brighter future.
And that each of us has a role to play in creating that future.
So as you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on what you've learned, to have these conversations with your friends and family, to be an advocate for change, because together we can make a difference.
Absolutely.
We can create a world where tragedies like this one are less likely to occur.
A world where empathy triumphs over apathy, where understanding outweighs judgment, and where hope guides us toward a brighter tomorrow.
That's a beautiful thought.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these ideas. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.